What's going on, Ambitious Vet? Welcome to the Ambitious Vet Show. I'm your host, Chris Hoffman. I'm a Marine Corps veteran who got out as a junior enlisted guy in 2012, went through 5 jobs in 5 different industries in 5 years before I began to discover that the immediate transition education expires when you desire more than just your basic needs being met. What do I mean by basic needs? Well, it's finance, healthcare, shelter, right? What happens after that's met, right? There's some deeper things that we need as ambitious vets to reach our full potential. And that's why this show exists, to dive into the trenches with today's top subject matter experts, share inspiring transition stories, and provide master classes to equip you with the realistic perspective on what it takes to not only survive, but thrive in the trenches of everyday life post-military. What's going on, Ambitious Vet? Are you ready to dive into the trenches with other like-minded ambitious vets that are wanting to stay unstoppable in the everyday trenches of life? Are you frustrated around being on other social media platforms or other community platforms with people that don't have similar backgrounds, or you just get distracted and you come to find out that it's not actually adding from your life, it's taking away? Well, if you said yes to either of those, I want you to go ahead and join. Go and apply for our Ambitious Vet platform. You can do so by going to ambitiousvetnetwork.com, apply, put in all of your military verification documentation inside of there. Once you're approved, you're going to be able to do a 14-day free trial. Inside that, you can take advantage of courses, live online events, a bi-weekly fire team call that we do as a group, and we just are in the process of announcing a very, very rewarding ambassador program for all those that are inside the platform, and maybe for you who is about to join. So again, go check out the ambitiousvetnetwork.com, learn more about the platform, and I look forward to seeing you at a future fire team call.
It's time to get into the trenches, dig into your purpose, and fire up your life's fulfillment. The Ambitious Vet Podcast starts now.
Hey, what's going on, Ambitious Vet? We're right back inside the trenches this week with Travis Johnson. Travis started life with 36 moves, 12 schools, 6 states, 5 different foster homes, and surviving 2 murder attempts and being homeless. Now, he's a retired naval officer and top-rated podcast host, speaking on his journey from trauma to triumph. Ambitious Vet, before I go ahead and welcome Travis to the show, I just want to let you know that I met this guy at the Military Infantry Conference in Las Vegas. If you haven't heard of that conference, go and check it out. It's like an ecosystem to any aspiring, top-performing leader, entrepreneurial, entertainer, anything military culture. It's definitely something that you would like to attend. But me and Travis had a couple meetups there, and I just got to tell you that this guy is genuine, and he has a magic formula called, how do you go from fucking being broken or feeling broken to really being able to really build solid, deep relationships, which, for myself, I know it hasn't been easy for me coming from the broken home that I came from into Uncle Sam's Misguided Children Corps. Hoorah! And, it's not an easy thing to overcome. So I'm hoping that this conversation between me and Travis makes a huge difference for you. Without further ado, Travis, man, are you there?
Oh, I'm here, Chris. Thanks for having me on.
Come on, man. I just like that voice. You can just tell you're another podcaster, man. I feel like I could just cover up in that voice, man.
You wouldn't be the only one. I actually was given a brief in 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, and General Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, were there, and he stopped me in the middle of my brief to compliment me on my voice. He's like, "I've never been in a meeting that's so calm," and the whole room erupts because they're there because my voice is that soothing. And no matter what I'm briefing, the worst things ever, they're like, "Yeah, we can calmly get through this."
Love it, man. Well, hey, with that being said, man, I'd definitely love to curl up that at night whenever I'm stuck in a snowstorm here in Dallas. But brother, feel free to fill the gaps inside that introduction, man. Let us know more about who you are, outside of just what blurted out of my mouth, man. Tell us more about you.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So when you hear the backstory of me being a child and that kind of craziness, you wonder like how on earth can a situation like that unfold? And a lot of it has to do with my mother's mental health problems. Every time she needed to seek treatment, my sister and I had to move somewhere else. While we were very young, it usually was grandma or dad. When we were a little bit older, it was foster care. And there was a few times sprinkled in there where we would be leaving a bad situation and we would end up on someone's couch for a couple of months, or we were living in a battered women's shelter before we found new housing and where we had to be. And really, we were talking a little bit about the show about your operating system. Um, Kids are building their operating system with every single thing that they're come in contact with until the conscious mind comes into place, on average between 7 and 9, some much earlier, some a little later, but about 7-ish is when that filter takes place and you start being able to say yes or no to things because you have something to measure it against.
Mm.
So when I was that age, before my conscious mind came in, my operating system was built on moving all the time. I was going to a new place, I was meeting new people, I was going to a new location, new school. And in order to be fine in that situation, I had to do a couple things. One, I got really comfortable with moving. Two, I got really great at navigation, memorizing talents. And three, I would always have a new group of people that I would have to meet and memorize because back in those days, in the 80s and 90s, it's not like you could just shoot them a text or send them a message on social media said, "Hey man, I don't live there no more." Like if you didn't have their phone number and their address, you lost all your friends. You lost all your contacts, all those people. No one knows what happened to you. All they know is you're gone. And I can't even imagine all the people that have like wanted to talk to me like the next day, but we've already moved on to a new city and they have no idea what happened to me.
Hmm.
It's just absolutely bananas, all of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, moving that many times, having to memorize new faces. I mean, that probably was a cool transition into the Navy then.
It was. It definitely was. And conferences like the Military Influencer Conference, I could tell you every person that I met, what they did and why and what they were wearing. And they were like, "How do you do that?" Well, I was forced to as a kid.
yeah.
Because if I didn't do that, if I just stayed within my shell, I would have no chance to meet anybody, to build any sort of relationship without that ability that was cultivated over time.
Yeah, yeah. But not everyone thinks like that, man. Like I know for me, like I moved a couple of times being a kid, you know what I mean? Having, multiple male faces show up in my life as a kid. And I never thought like that, man. So what had you get to the at a young age be like, hey, I need to follow this step process to kind of start building relationships here? Was it a protective mechanism for you or
Oh yeah.
I mean, what would you describe it as?
So I had 3 grades, or excuse me, 4 grades where I was in 3 different schools during that school year. So kindergarten, second grade, fourth grade, and seventh grade, I was in 3 different schools during each school year.
Wow.
And when I went to a new place, I just asked a question. I was like, "How do I figure out who everyone is?" And the librarian took me to the library and showed me the old yearbooks. She's like, "Here, all your classmates are right in here. You can look at all the names, you can look at all the faces, and you can figure out who people are." When you move so often, everyone's a stranger, and strangers are scary, especially when you're a kid, right? Everyone was told stranger danger. So for the way for me to not make them strangers was to memorize all these faces and names. So I had to go through the list and figure out who was who. So walking around the school, I just didn't, feel attacked by everyone just glancing at me walking through the halls. That was one of them. That was one of the major things. So like in seventh grade, I had my thing down. My first day at school in the new class in seventh grade, I went to the library, and the first thing I asked for was yearbooks. And the librarian was like, "Why would you want a yearbook?" I was like, "I want to know these people." Like to that librarian, they were totally confused. Like, "I don't understand why you would do this." I'm like, "Trust me, I need it." And I went through and I memorized something like 400 names and faces.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. No, I just want to pause there to kind of let it sink in, man, because like I'm thinking about it, fast forwarding, out, and I'm not meaning to fast forward your story, but just thinking later down the road, transitioning and just stuff like that, putting it full circle for my brain and maybe the listener is like, man, like the power of like maybe going into a new geographical location, going to another work conference or something like that, and finding a liaison, a source to know where everyone is. I mean, that explains it, right?
Mhm.
And an adult version is going to a conference and they have like all the attendee list or something like that and learning all that. And still people are too lazy to do that shit, me included, to go down the attendee list, look at the picture and like, hey man, I saw you from the attendee list. You do this, that. And it just expedites the process, right? On deepening a relationship versus like, well, I don't know that guy. I don't know what he does or anything like that, man. It kind of helps out a little bit. And that's cool that you created that framework at a very young age, and a librarian kind of guiding you, hey, use this
Mhm.
yearbook, and you can kind of start using
Yeah.
the process. And then the yearbook has just become a symbolic thing for the rest of your life, it sounds like.
Oh, absolutely. Like we met at MEC, and when you go on the Hoover app, and you can go into the Military Influencer Conference, you can search and sort by all your likes and dislikes, right? So I could search by state.
Hmm,
So I searched by state, found I'm currently in Oklahoma City. I found everyone at the conference that came to the conference from Oklahoma,
hmm.
and I made sure to connect with them while I was there. And now that I got back into the state, I set up coffee with all of those people. And the fun thing about it is it has all of their interests listed, whatever they've put on there. So it's the most recent, accurate, up to date list. So before I go and talk to them, I already have a cheat sheet that I can look at to go make sure I'm having relevant conversations with them.
There it is.
Yeah.
That's good, man. No, I mean, I'm convicted by that shit. I'm like, man, I didn't follow through like that with some attendees. I remember some of the business cards, I'd write little notes on the cards
Mhm. Yeah.
and be like, okay, I got to follow up with this person and talk about this one word here. Hopefully it primes my brain afterwards. And sometimes your brain shows up and sometimes it doesn't. We all know that. But you have an incredible superpower, brother. And I've heard it from around the vine, right? Of veterans. Think of the veteran communities of Vine, multiple seeds of Vine saying, hey man, Travis Johnson's a genius in deepening relationships. So I'd love to kind of just, from a fundamental level, man, what does like social capital or networking, what does that term, how do you explain that term from your core philosophy?
Yeah, absolutely. There's two words, and I'm going to say the same word twice. There's networking, and then there's networking. When people think and they get the cringe factor from networking, what they're really experiencing is a lot of people in a room that are actually prospecting for new clients. They're not there to meet you. They're not there to make a relationship. They're not there to provide value or anything like that. They're there to get a new client. And those people, they say they're networking, but they're not. They're prospecting. When I go and I network, I don't want them to know anything about me at the end of the conversation. I want to know about them, what their needs are, what their next big project is, what lights them up, what do they need help with. I may or may not be able to answer what they need help with, but by the time I meet 5 or 10 or 15 people, I've met someone that can solve that problem for them. And if they don't know each other, or maybe they've forgotten what each other does, I provide that reintroduction or introduction needed for them to get their problem solved by
Right.
having it as the other focused point of view. They're not every was it the more they talk, the better listener that you are, right? The better conversational you are, if the more that they talk. I let them talk and talk and talk, and ask questions about it. Am I interested in this? I'm interested in that. I want to know about this. And if I don't have a question lined up, I'll just repeat the last 2 or 3 words that they said, and they'll just keep talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I love that. I even like doing the pause sometimes where after someone talks is, Mm, do some grunts and pauses. So, Ambitious Vet, you may call me out on that from this your previous episodes of see if you can pull a little bit more genius out of the guest or something like that. You know what I mean? Some good active listening. But yeah, man, I mean, I think that's fascinating, right? I think just being able to follow through with relevant information, in your case as a young chap traveling a lot as a kid, leveraging a yearbook, right? To kind of figure out who's
Mhm.
who, going and building relationships all the way back then and accelerating what 20, 30, 50 years. How old are you now?
41.
41. No, I'm just kidding, man. 20 plus years or so,
Mhm.
now being able to, figure out how to have relevant, conversations and then also the tactics as far as, how to ask questions, how to be over there with people, man, and not just be throwing up on people. So outside of networking and social capital, right? You've talked about it's like a genuine conversation. You make it all about them. That's great, right? Um, Now I want to follow up with like how what does that look like on a weekly, monthly basis for you? How are you actively building relationships just versus just looking for deals? And how does that play out in your life?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a solid question. One of the things that kind of got me when I retired is I had this enormous network. I got people from all over the world through podcasting and my travels and a few different things, which is fantastic. And when I retired, I realized I didn't have a big local network. Even though I had been stationed in Oklahoma City for the better part of 20 years, I hadn't really built a network outside of military people. There were some things I was doing in the nonprofit world. There was things I'm doing at church at the time, and those help you a little bit, but I would now classify myself as an entrepreneur, and I would have to find the people that I really jive with, that I really want to talk to. So the Chamber of Commerce is where I started, and they have all sorts of meet and greets and different things. But a lot of those people that are there are prospecting. The type of person that I want to meet is either the founder or the entrepreneur. And the founder or the entrepreneur gets frustrated with those kind of meetups where everyone's just prospecting because they know at the end of the day, getting on someone's list or someone getting on your list really doesn't move the needle. It's meeting other like-minded individuals that are at that level, right? So meeting with founders, meeting with entrepreneurs, meeting with organizers. Like I talked to Cortez Riggs 5 6 times when I was at the Military Influencer Conference, and every time I didn't tell him what I did, I only asked about him. And you will find that building a network of those kind of people is going to take you a lot farther than going to some prospecting meeting that's covered and saying that it's a networking meeting. So I try to get out and find these organizations, find these meetups, find these people. They're going to connect me to the other people. They're going to help me fill my cup. They're going to help me do what I need to do, but I'm going to also be in a great position to help them with what they need to do. So I got home from Mick. I stayed an extra week for SEMA in Vegas, the world's largest car show. When I got back from there, I had a friend invite me to, hey, you need to come to this conference in town. I had just spoken at 3 conferences in October, and I was like, do I want to go to another one of these things? And I'm like, wait, I'm going as an attendee. Like, I don't have to prep. I don't have to do anything. I just got to make sure that I'm talking to 2 or 3 people every place that I go to, and I have to make sure to talk to the organizer. So I did. I talked to the organizer and I was like, this is great. And all. I love everyone that's speaking, but no one's talking about podcasting. Do you have a podcasting guy? He's like, is that what you do? It is. I would love to set up coffee with you and talk about what your goals are because I haven't seen another entrepreneur meetup like this anywhere in Oklahoma. He's like, you're right. This is the first one. So one meeting led to our next meeting together, led to the next meeting together. And at that meeting, he introduced me to the TEDx organizer in Oklahoma City.
Nice. Nice. Yeah, I love the ripple effect of just asking questions and where it can lead.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
then eventually they figure out who you are and what you can do and what you can provide. I haven't done a lot of marketing for my old show, the Nonprofit Architect Podcasts. I've done a little bit more for the Titan Evolution podcast, my current one. And I'm launching a new one here in March with Flossie Hall is going to be the co-host. I don't know if you know Flossie. Called the
Oh,
Startup Shit Show. Yeah.
Flossy.
But all of the meetings that I've taken, all the relationships that I've built, all the things that I've done has all been providing value to other people. And every week I get 5, 6, 10, 15 people that are saying, hey, you need to talk to Travis Johnson about this. Hey, Travis Johnson is the guy. I haven't asked them. All I did was provide them value and love on them and help them solve their problems. And they can't help but say wonderful things about me, which is really helpful.
I'm sure it's not all nice things. Come on, man. None of us are perfect, but I mean, yeah, man, totally, man. I can get that asking questions, people like you more, stuff like that. In reality, like people like you more when they're talking mostly in the conversation, right? Because
Mhm.
not a lot of people have that skill of, taming themselves and asking the questions, right? And genuinely wanting to add value first before getting something back, right? I love that story of like the ripple effect of just asking questions, right? Because that's like reverse psychology, man. That's like something that isn't naturally how we think, right? And I
Mhm.
remember like a first mentor that I met when I first got out of the military. His name is Dan Dwyer. He ran Vets to Biz And me and him attended the first ever military infantry conference, I believe, in 2017 in Dallas. And he was like, Chris, the problem with you vets, and he's a retired lieutenant colonel with a Bronze Star. And he was, the problem with you guys, the young guys, and millennials, is just like, you guys just ask for something too quick, meaning a transactional thing. And I was like, man, like that is something that, is definitely very relevant. And I don't know if it's from a survival mode mindset that us military personnel can come from, scarcity, trying to get the mission done, so focused on the outcome. I mean, how did you start taming it? And how did you realize that asking good questions, getting interested in people, like it does impact your bottom line, and you can, you know, be successful post-military, not just trying to hard charge and, force shit. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, in the military, asking questions like that and trying to get to the solution to get the mission done, like that's praised. That's lauded behavior. That's like, oh yeah, man, this guy's a go-getter. But when you're dealing with people in the civilian world and everything is much more loosely structured, if there's any structure, have you ever spent time in the Middle East?
Afghanistan in 2010.
Did you spend any time with the locals at all, or was it strictly business?
A&A, if you count them as locals.
So I was in Bahrain for a year, and from there I went to Dubai, and I went to Egypt for a wedding, and I went to Austria, and I went to Hungary.
Mm,
And what's interesting is that overseas there's always some kind of gift, and there's always some kind of conversation before you can start talking business. There's a standardized kind of timeline based on what country that you're in,
kind of like an
because they
etiquette.
don't want to,
Yeah.
yeah, they don't want to do business unless they know, like, and trust you. And you can't possibly talk business on the first meeting because they don't know you in their mind, right? We're always so eager for that next buck. We understand the math behind making money, and just like Babe Ruth striking out and whistling all the way back to the dugout. He's like, "Why are you whistling?" And he's like, "I'm one strikeout closer to my next home run." He understood the numbers game. And that's what we've been taught in business is like, oh yeah, how many people do you close? How many contacts? How many leads do you need? And you
Hmm.
can do that math and the math works, but then you're also treating people like a number instead of like a person.
Yep.
I've structured my life, especially my second half of my military career. I was enlisted for the first 11 years, made E6 for those not in the Navy first class. Um, before getting commissioned, and I actually declined '04. I declined lieutenant commander to retire. It's a very different ecosystem. It's very different in the way that works because almost everything on the officer side is relational. As where on the enlisted side, you're just told what to do and you go and do it.
You're just executing. Yeah.
You're just executing, right?
Yep.
So if you can't build relationships, you can't get anything done as an officer. So that they like that I was a go-getter, but they also like slowed me down. And then being in the Middle East for a year and dealing and living with people of just a different perspective and a different point of view, like that stuff gradually changes you over time.
Mm.
So you learn like what's really important, what's really valued. And we even talked about this before. We talked about how do grandparents treat their grandkids? Vastly different than their parents treat their kids because the parents are still broken from when they were a kid. They're doing this all for the first time. They have no idea what they're doing. On your first kid, you think everything's going to kill them. By your second kid, you're like, hardly, that almost nothing is going to kill them. Right. So
Yeah.
why do they get away with so much more stuff? Because you've changed, right? You're not treating them differently. You just know how to treat them better. And your grandparents know that far better than you do. And when you get to that age and you understand what really is important, what really matters, the dollars don't matter as much. I mean, I grew up in trailer parks and foster homes.
Hmm.
I grew up in all different kinds of government assistance. And
Yeah.
for the vast majority of my young enlisted career, it was about the dollars because I had to provide for my family. And the only way to do that was to make the next rank. And the only way to do that was to take care of this, this, and this. And I knew that. I was very focused on that.
Yeah.
Some people in the military are not that way, and they're like, I don't need to make that rank." To me, that drove me nuts. Like, how do you not want to have more money in your pocket to help your family do better? They didn't want the responsibility or perceived responsibility, and I just wanted the money at the time. one of the factors for anyone getting commissioned is the dollars. But as soon as that happened, the dollars quickly faded as a reason for anything. And the only thing that was left with is the relationships of who you are and what you do. As an officer, it's more like being a civilian because I'm worried about my personal branding. And when you're an officer, you're worried about your personal branding. Your name goes out and goes farther than you ever will. And when you show up, they already know everything about you. And if you haven't built relationships properly, they know that about you before you ever get there. And you'll walk in and all these doors will be closed, there'll be bars on the windows, and you wondered what happened. Well, you were a jerk for 3 years and they found out about it. When you can't get away with anything, it's a lot easier to do what you need to do. Should you, from your inner core, want to do the best always? Absolutely. But man, you don't feel like it every day.
Right.
And every now and then, you do something that is not the best, a little bit less than the best. And that starts getting out, and suddenly your whole name is tainted. You're cheating other people, you're doing whatever else, you can't be believed, you're not showing up, you're not delivering, whatever the thing is, people find out about it. And in the veteran space, veterans talk. You go out and you have a business and you say you do this whatever service and you charge this much for it and you don't deliver, good luck signing another client because all the veterans are talking about it. It's about that personal brand. It's about that accountability that you hold yourself to. One of the reasons I wrote the podcast books that I wrote is because I bought one from a veteran that was much less value than I thought it was going to be. It was like 6 pages of bullet points saying, do this. And I felt cheated.
Hmm.
And my network challenged me. It's like, well, you don't like it. You should write a better one. And I did. I wrote the Ultimate Podcast Guide. And it wasn't just the what, it was the how to do it, the why it matters, and how to decide. And people are taking this thing, building and launching their old podcast careers, following that advice without needing to talk to me again. Now in the coaching structure, right? What's the follow-on sale? I have those things, but I don't want anyone to need me because I feel like I'm cheating them if I'm not giving them everything.
Right. Right. And as content providers, right, I've been one for the past like 4 years, and man, there is a up and down roller coaster ride of doing that. Right. When you write like an ebook or something like that, right, that about it's the 80-20 rule. 80% of people actually won't even take action. They'll read it and won't take action, right? 20% actually will, right? So in your case, the 80% that don't take action after they read it, they got all this knowledge, right? You think about all the people that are the most educated in the world, right? All the people that go get that next degree because they think that's going to make the biggest difference, and then they don't go make that doesn't increase their income in life, man, is because they think knowledge is more powerful than like experience, taking action and getting results, right? So I'm hearing in what you're saying is, yeah, you're getting the knowledge, but you're betting on the 80%, not taking action, and then getting it from a pro, a guy that's been able to build some successful podcasts. And can you just mention some of the podcasts, recent podcasts that you've launched, one that was successful in the past, and kind of I think you run an awards, like an award platform, right? Yeah, please speak on that.
Yeah. So I was in Bahrain in the Middle East. I launched the Nonprofit Architect podcast. I had been doing some nonprofit work in the U.S., raised $500,000 in 2 years, wrote a couple of books, had a lot of fun doing it. Got to the Middle East, and my family stayed in Oklahoma. And I knew that I needed something productive to do, and I was hoping to help nonprofits, right? So I had a bunch of conversations with people. Someone tried to convince me I should start a podcast. And I was like, what do I know about podcasting? He's like, well, you've got that voice. And I was like, yeah, you do have that right. I do have that voice. And he was like, you got a voice, you got a face for radio and a voice for newspaper. And I was like, dude, that is so mean. He's like, I'm messing with you, but you should totally have a podcast. And I talked to a couple people in the industry and tried to figure out like what I should do this now. I was talking to a guy and we got to like the 35 minute mark. And he's like, I want to let you know that I'm really excited about whatever you're going to be doing. I was like, why is that? He's like, because you haven't mentioned your personal compensation a single time. And that's what it takes to make a show and have it dedicated and make it last, make it do the long haul. And I ended up launching the Nonprofit Architect. I had listened to the top 50 shows in the nonprofit world, and there was 2 types of shows. There was like industry professionals like just BSing with each other. And then the second show was a nonprofit highlight show. Hey, this person has a nonprofit. He's going to tell you all about it. End of podcast. No one was teaching anyone how to do things.
Mm.
And I know people that educate always get put on just that level above everyone else because they have the knowledge. I knew that I had some knowledge, but not all the knowledge. So I reached out and intended to build the premier how-to podcast for nonprofits. And we interviewed nonprofit leaders, business leaders, consultants, people with the special skills to help nonprofits do it better. And within 3 months of launching, we were ranked number 4 in the U.S. in the nonprofit category.
Congratulations on that, brother. That's not easy.
That's, I know it's
That's
not.
not
I'm doing it
easy.
with the second one. It's insane.
And a third one. Don't you got another one coming down the road?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I
You
ran
like
that
it a little
show.
bit. You like it a little
Yeah,
bit.
I do. I like it a lot. I shut down the nonprofit architect kind of into last summer, and I still get referrals that come in. This is the thing about podcasting or creating any kind of content that's out there is passive influence.
Mm.
People can still find my shows from here until eternity unless they get taken down or whatever. And I'm always going to be teaching people in those shows. That's always going to put me in a little bit higher leverage position. They're always going to know that I'm the expert. Anything that I've published over the past however many years social media has been around, people can still find that stuff. I'm still teaching them. I'm still doing good things, and I'm generating that passive influence,
Yeah.
even though I stopped recording that show. Uh, when I got out of the Navy, I wanted to do a show where I could cuss, where I could, not have anyone hold me accountable for my opinion. I suppose the listeners would hold me accountable for my opinion, but I grabbed an awesome co-host and Carol Carpenter, and we launched the Titan Evolution podcast. And the Titan Evolution podcast is those raw, real stories. They're really talking about those things that matter, like, I don't know, everything in politics, right? All of those little things. Like we talk about that. We talk about people's internal story, their internal journey. The amount of the interviews we've had on this have just been ridiculous. We've had a couple of NFL players, Harlem Globetrotter, American Idol contestant, all these different people that come in and have been the pinnacle, have been the titan in whatever industry they're in. And one of the things we ask them is what makes you a titan? And they have to define what their superpower is,
Mm.
their thing that because they have that thing is the thing that brought them in all the success that they have. And that show has taken off like wildfire. Like we basically launched in the top 10% globally when we launched the show, which is just amazing.
Come on.
And it's just phenomenal. While we were doing that, if you can see the plaque behind me, I don't know if you've got video going or not, but also host the Veteran Podcast Awards. Shane Cunningham reached out to me a couple of years ago and he said, "Hey, I bought this URL, veteranpodcastawards.com. What do you think?" I was like, "Well, you should start it and I should host it." He's like, "Done." And we had started putting this thing together. I have the Veteran Podcast Network that's got over 70 shows in it, which is amazing. We're working on building out an app right now to get all veteran podcasters on one platform and eventually all veteran content creators. So that could be musicians, artists, eventually will include businesses and nonprofits, because there's not a place you can find all this stuff in one house. There just isn't. And it's frustrating when you want to go find something and you can't find it. I want to back veteran stuff. Well, how the heck do you find veteran stuff? Man, is that a problem? I know you've done a pretty good job of collecting businesses. Is that right?
In what fashion? Collect them in my pocket.
Oh, in your database, right? Aren't you building a database?
Yeah, I mean, we've done a great job with the database. As far as attracting, I wouldn't say business owners, mostly just veterans that value personal growth, right? Would it be, a certain percentage being aspiring entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs, like, we know that are out there, or mid-level managers, man. We got also mid-level managers, immediate transitioning veterans that would listen to this show, that come into our platform, and all that, man. But yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying though, man, is like, with all these great networking skills that you've established, right? Like you have been able to tie it great to podcasting as well. And I think just for myself, just speaking from my experience with podcasting over 4 years, and I don't necessarily see myself as a podcaster. I see myself as a guy that is a catalyst to connect people to a platform to be heard, or a catalyst for people to connect to create, get their next mission done. And that's always been the vision of this podcast, man. And I'm hearing the same similar mission side of what you're doing is how do you get a platform that has people's voices being heard? How do you
Mhm.
get them promoted? How do you connect people and all that? So like your big network that you've established for years, I mean, it helps when you're bringing people together with the podcast awards, different platforms and stuff like that. But to answer your question, man, our database isn't made up of a whole bunch of veteran business owners. It's probably about 20%. And then the rest is like aspiring entrepreneurs, mid-level managers, immediate transition guys and gals that are just looking to figure out who the hell they are, man. Because we don't know when we first get out.
That is 100% true. I'm in it right now. I'm less than a year out of retirement, and I still try to figure out who the heck I am every day.
Every day, man.
When I
Yeah.
was when I was growing up and going through all that craziness, I was very shy. I didn't want to talk to people. I would figure out who they are and know their name, but like I really wasn't a big talker. Um, Couple things that helped me kind of get out of that shell is I had what was his name? AZ1 Shipley. He brought me in. I was struggling with oral review boards. I don't know if you guys did that in the Marine Corps. You have to go and answer a bunch of questions in front of a bunch of people in order to pass the board or to get recognized as a, I don't know, Marine of the Quarter. Do you guys do that?
We did that. I was never
Yeah.
on one of those.
Hey, everyone's at a different part of their journey at different times, man. You
That's
never know
it.
where you're going to be. But I went in there and I did one of those oral review boards for like junior sailor quarter or something, and I bombed it.
Mm,
Um, And the reason I did is because I was unsure of what I was saying, or I wasn't sure if the answer I was giving was correct. And he brought me in for, we didn't call it this at the time, but what it was a private coaching session. And he said, "Tell me something about." I was an AME, I was an ejection seat guy. And they're like, "Tell me something about your job," and I'd tell him something about my job. And he would say, "Oh, this, that, and the other, blah 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 blah." And I was like, "Wow, is that correct?" He's like, "I have no idea." I was like, "Well, what just happened?" He was like, "I didn't know the answer, but I could be confident that I knew how to pronounce all of the words that I was going to use." And so his confidence wasn't in the concept of the answer or the idea,
mm.
but whatever words he was going to choose to speak, he spoke them with confidence. And when I got that skill on board, my goal then became when I went onto those boards was to get the people on the board, whether I was right or wrong, was to question their own personal knowledge because I sounded that confident.
Yeah.
And when I made the decision about my 9-year mark to see what a commission would look like, what would it take? How could I get there? There was a Seaman to Admiral program or State 21. There was LDO, Limited Duty Officer, or there was OCS, OTS, whatever your service calls officer training. And the first one I signed up for, Seaman to Admiral program, I got approved. And I crushed all of my boards because of that one skill that I learned. Did I know the answers? I did. Did I know why I wanted to do things? I did. Knowing your own why, oh my God, that goes miles and miles and miles towards your next goal of knowing why you're doing something. And I could articulate that well, and I could make eye contact, and I sounded confident. And they selected two people out of our wing. They both got selected that year. Two people out of like the 200 that were selected were from Oklahoma City, which
Come
is
on.
just nuts because in theory that shouldn't happen.
What are you saying
Based
about
on
Oklahoma?
no, just based on numbers. There's like 2,000 Navy here, and in Norfolk, I don't know how many Navy they have, like 200, 300,000. Like
Mm,
based on just statistics, there should only
uh,
really have been one slot coming out of Oklahoma.
yeah,
We had
yeah.
two guys get picked up.
By numbers. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah.
Just kidding, brother. Well, hey, brother, I want to kind of get this to a point where we're kind of wrapping this baby up. I want to kind of give you one last chance to just do some save rounds, man. Like I said prior, there's a few people that kind of listen to this show, man. There's going to be the ones that are out, entrepreneurs that are just looking to become more successful, grounded in their personal development. It's going to be people that are entrepreneurs, people that may be an employee post-military, but like they're really wanting to learn what it takes to transition into being an entrepreneur. And then there's also this third leg of just a high performing leader in the private or government space, man. They're just looking to, hey, how do I improve? How do I get better at talking to people? How do I get better at networking, building real relationships versus like, you know, where's my next deal coming from, or a
Mhm.
transactional conversation where you're receiving and giving things every time you're talking, right? Like, brother, what would be one last golden grenade that you would provide to an ambitious vet that could help them kind of break through the next barriers towards reaching their full potential post military?
Absolutely. And those are great questions. I have two answers for you. I've got one from the entrepreneurship, one from the leadership. From the entrepreneurship point of view, when I did the Nonprofit Architect podcast, I thought that it would make sense for me to do coaching or consulting in the nonprofit world. It made sense. The amount of learning that I was doing, if you're doing a podcast, every interview you do is a private master class with the expert. You can ask them anything you want to learn, but I kind of felt like that was a natural segue. And I started pushing coaching and pushing consulting. And I push for I don't know how many years I pushed that for. I got one client that whole time. Did I do a great job? Absolutely did a great job. The client is making more money in their nonprofit than they ever have before, which is fantastic. But I got frustrated. I got frustrated because I didn't feel like my audience was listening. And I was talking to a guy and he's like, "Well, what does your audience want?" And I said, "I don't know." He's like, "Well, have you asked them?" I realized I had built this audience of some amount of people and I had never asked them what they wanted. And as soon as I asked that, they said an overwhelming response is, "We want to know how you're such a badass at podcasting." And that led to the first book, that led to the first college course that I created. That is, I'm the only podcaster with an accredited college course. That led to the next 5 books that I wrote because I actually asked the audience what they wanted.
Hmm.
I was actually able to give it to them. When I created the Ultimate Podcast Guide, that first version at 27 bucks, I made $3,000 within like 2 months of that thing. Books don't sell like that.
Mm-mm.
Ebooks especially don't sell like that. This thing was selling like a wildfire because they knew what they wanted and they finally figured out. I figured out that I could ask them and let them tell me what they wanted and that I could provide a service that they wanted to them. So ask the people around you what they want. And if you're trying to figure out if you're not sure about yourself, ask people around you that know and care about you what your superpower is, and you'll be surprised what they tell you. Write those things down. It's easy to you. You don't think you wonder, how could anyone have a problem with this? It's so easy. That thing is your superpower. Start figuring out what those are for you and then do something in that area. For leadership is easy. Zig Ziglar's got a great quote. You can get anything in the world if you want, if you just help enough other people get what they want. And that goes right back to what we were talking about with networking. I didn't talk about me. I didn't talk about my sales quotas. I didn't talk about my product or what I did. I did if they asked. But as soon as I answered, I flipped it back on them and I was back to answering that, asking them questions. When you help people reach their goals in business, leadership, life, and work, whatever the thing is, if you help people reach your goals, you're a leader. They're going to look up to you as a leader. And that's going to pay off in some way in the future because you've poured into them.
I love it. Well, Travis, thanks for pouring into us.
You're welcome.
Well, ambitious vet, I absolutely love Travis. I love getting to know him more. Make sure you go and you check out everything that Travis Johnson got going on LinkedIn and beyond. I'll just go ahead and send them to your LinkedIn profile, brother, and kind of have them start from there. If it's
That's
all right.
perfect.
Is there
That's
anything else
perfect.
that you want to send an ambitious vet to? How can they figure out more about you?
Yeah, find me on LinkedIn. It's like Travis D. Johnson, MHR. I'm sure Chris will have that in the notes for you. And on there, I talk about all the stuff that I do. If you go in the About section, everything's hyperlinked. If you want to know about the Veteran Podcast Awards, that's linked in there. If you want to know about Podcast Titan, is everything I do that has all my books, my courses, and my leadership, and our professional services. If you're doing a podcast and it's too much work for you, let us take care of the work so you don't have to do it anymore. Let's make it easy for you to continue to love podcasting and having a great time doing that. But on LinkedIn, send me a message. Say, "Hey, I heard you on the Ambitious Vet," and I'll let Chris know to give you a shout out for actually paying attention and listening and following that call to action of connecting with me on LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, I'll definitely do the shout out for sure. I love action takers, man. Anybody that's listening to the show that is a real action taker, got inspired for one idea or even just you're wanting to figure out what it takes to be a badass podcaster, right? And you're listening to this show, go and take action. I'll definitely give you a shout out once Travis tells me that you took action. That's the whole point of this entire show, is how do we inspire you into action towards thriving in the trenches of everyday life? Travis, brother, I just want to say thank you for joining the show, man. It's been an absolute honor. Every time I'm around you, man, your voice, I'm probably gonna be thinking about it next to my wife tonight, and don't tell her. And man, it's just a genuine love, man. You got a genuine love for people, brother. And I feel it. And a lot of people need to feel it. And I'm sure they do around you, brother, man. So thank you for joining the show. And yeah, man, any other last parting words?
Yeah, I just wanted to tie everything together of what you said, because you said early on that people think that knowledge is the thing, and at the end you said you love action takers. I learned in GI Joe that knowledge is only half the battle, but you have to do something with it for it to make a difference.
Boom. With that, we're going to send you off, Ambitious Vet.
The Ambitious Vet is available on all popular podcast platforms. Go to vettrainingcoaching.com to subscribe, rate, and share with fellow vets.
We all deal with challenges. It may look like habits and routines, knowing who the hell you are, self-management and regulation. How are you managing your emotions every single day, every single week? It could be personal planning and strategy. It could be, how do you build social support systems locally in your local community? No matter what those personal development challenges are for you, I want you to know, Ambitious Vet, you're not alone. In fact, there is a exclusive platform that we just launched late last year, called the Ambitious Vet Community Learning Platform, where you can go and apply for right now and start a 14-day free trial and start being matchmaked and connected with other veterans that are looking to improve in specific personal development topics that you are looking to improve in as well. Not only that, live monthly events, courses, and we also have a bi-weekly live fire team call that you would be able to have access to. So Ambitious Vet, if you're ready to come in and you're serious about growing in 2023 and beyond, I encourage you to go check out ambitiousvetnetwork.com and put your application in to come join the platform. And I can't wait to see you inside of a future Ambitious Vet fire team call.